And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Hi there, I'm National Weather Service Meteorologist Peter Chan with your Alaska Marine Weather Outlook on this Tuesday, February 11th, 2025. And we start out with the sea ice. We have seen some ice redevelop and grow in areas of Cook Inlet, Bristol Bay, and Kuskokwim Bay over the past week or so as we've had some colder weather. And with the weather scenario we have coming up, the ice should generally hold, could grow a little bit more, but we are going to get a shot of Arctic air. It's fast moving, work its way across the mainland and push westward, especially out over the northern half of the Bering. So these areas out of Norton Sound, off the Seward Peninsula and off of the Yukon Delta, with those easterly winds, east-northeast flow, it's going to tend to want to push the ice a bit westward, at least the ice edge. And with the colder temperatures, we could see maybe just a little more ice growth within that region of the northern Bering and around Norton Sound and then down through the YK deltas. So what we have coming up here late tonight, this Tuesday night and early Wednesday morning, it's backdoor cold front. It's kind of the beginning of this push of Arctic air. And it's in response to a building high pressure way up in the Arctic Ocean. That high is going to build above 1050 millibars. We have this weak low coming northward into the Gulf. It's not especially strong. We don't expect it to deepen really, but it is going to increase the pressure gradient along the Beaufort Sea coast as well as in through the interior. So we're going to see some stronger winds pull that cold air westward, and that's what's going to eventually arrive here along the west side of the state, especially Thursday night into Friday and Saturday. So on Wednesday, this front is not fast moving and almost wants to stall out. It will eventually just kind of fold downward, but you can see by the way the isobars are aligned, that's going to allow for a northeast to east flow there. The low pressure coming north doesn't have a bunch of punch to it on Wednesday, and we have a couple of lows out through the Bering, but those are not going to have much influence. And then on Thursday, that frontal boundary just weakens and kind of lays out here along the Alaska range into northwest Canada. The Arctic high pressure up in the Arctic Ocean, 1054 millibar high with an extension, not quite as strong over toward Big Bear Lakes, Great Slave Lakes. And this is what we're looking at here to keep at least the colder air being pushed to and out over the northern portion of the Bering Sea. These couple of weak lows, this one's going to just weaken and wash out, and then this low will just bring a little bit of precipitation, some light snow to the intercoastal mountains, maybe initially a little light snow, light rain mix along the Gulf Coast, but not a major storm. But it is the hints of the beginning of a pattern change. The pattern change, we're going to start to get some lows coming back out of the North Pacific up into the Gulf next week, so we expect the weather to get a little more active again there. In the meantime, though, high pressure still bringing clear skies, lighter winds, especially off along the Gulf Coast with that approaching weak trough. So variable winds, that's rather unusual. Variable winds only around 5-10 knots, swells 8 feet. For the inner channel, still 20-knot northeast winds there. Stevens Passage, waves 2-3 feet. North winds 10 knots, Lynn Canal, and then southeast winds there up Dixon Entrance into Metlakatla and Ketchikan with waves maybe a couple of feet. But winds will pick up Thursday. Northerly winds here for the inner channels, Lynn Canal, Stevens Passage, 25 knots, waves 4 or 5 feet. North wind 15 knots with waves as much as 6-8 feet here down and through the Dixon Entrance. And then offshore flow, we're looking at an offshore flow as high as 25 knots with gusts to 40 knots out of the icy Strait corridor and waves 9 to 10 feet. Now across the northwestern Gulf, Cook Inlet, Wednesday, variable winds around 10 knots outside of Hinchinbrook Entrance and within Prince William Sound and off the eastern Kenai, so not a lot of wave action there, maybe 2-3 feet within Prince William Sound. East to northeast winds as we go down the length of Cook Inlet, with northeast winds 15 knots once you get around Anchor Point southward into Kamishak Bay, waves 3 to 4 feet. And then on Thursday, a bit stronger winds. Look for easterly 30 to 35 knot winds outside of Hinchinbrook Entrance back toward Kayak Island. Northeast winds 20 knots within Prince William Sound, 3-4 foot waves there. Off the Kenai, northeast winds to 30 knots, 8-9 foot waves. And then lower Cook Inlet where you have still some open water. Anchor Point off down the lower portion of Cook Inlet, northeast winds 20 knots, waves right around 5 feet. So on Wednesday across Kodiak Island, northeast to east winds 20 knots, and generally as we go down the length of the Alaska Peninsula, northeast to east winds 15 to 20 knots, becoming variable around 10 knots either side there at Cold Bay and False Pass. And then for Thursday, variable wind Shelikof Strait 10 knots. Otherwise, west-northwest winds trailing out down along the Alaska Peninsula, generally around 15 to near 20 knots, waves 5-6 feet on the North Pacific side and maybe 2 to 4 feet on the Bering side. For the Aleutians, winds will be generally southeast to south for the eastern and central Aleutians, picking up to about 25 knots as you get west of Adak, but again, by Aleutian standards, just a relatively calm day. But we will see some calmer winds, variable winds around 10 knots there, far eastern Aleutians around Dutch Harbor on Alaska. Winds go back to the north there through the central Aleutians, 15, 20 knots, and then turn back around. Try to come more westward there at, between Adak and Kiska, so there's not a whole lot of strong winds or anything to worry about out through the Aleutians. Now for the mainland Wednesday, offshore flow, looking at northeast to east winds 25 knots out of Kuskokwim and Bristol Bays. As we go up along the lower Yukon Delta and up into Norton Sound, east to northeast winds 15 knots. This is going to be picking up on Thursday as that push. The Arctic air is not really going to arrive to this area of the state until Thursday into Friday, but still you're going to notice winds starting to pick up Thursday out of the northeast, out of Norton Sound and along the lower Yukon Delta at 20 knots. That's going to have a tendency to want to push the ice a bit westward. Winds variable down there towards St. Paul and St. George, but again, there'll be a quick shot of Arctic air work its way westward as we go through Thursday and into Friday. Now, it'll be more noteworthy up here in areas of the Arctic. For Wednesday through the Bering Strait, look for east-northeast winds right around 15 knots. As we get further north, though, coming in off of Point Lay and Wainwright up to Utqiagvik, look for easterly winds 25 knots, picking up to 30 knots there, especially get toward New Exit, Prudhoe Bay, Kaktovik. And those winds will be increasing as we get into Wednesday night and Thursday. So along here, we do expect the potential for blowing snow to start to develop on Wednesday, especially in the afternoon and evening. And then clearly by the time we get into Thursday, we're looking at easterly winds along the Beaufort Sea coast and from Utqiagvik down to Point Hope or Cape Lisburne in that 30 to 40 knot range, east to northeast winds. So that's going to cause considerable blowing and drifting snow, and if the winds get any higher, you could have some localized ground blizzard conditions to contend with. So reduced visibility and more hazardous for any sort of travel. And that's the way things are shaping up as we head into Thursday. So be safe if you do have to venture out, and certainly wait for the weather to lift. We should have some improving conditions as we go through the weekend.